It's beginning in March. So what we have for you guys today is a 30-minute back pain program on how to manage back pain, just without any props, just working with your body weight. And so this is going to be almost entirely movement-based, especially today. We are going to do some stretching, some strengthening, and then today we're going to focus in on the mechanics of how to squat and how to lunge. So basically, how do you bend over safely? So we'll look at sort of how you should set yourself up that may be different from friends and family to protect your back. Now, one thing I'll highlight before we get started is that your back is different than mine and different than your friends and your neighbors, and you know your back well. So if something does not feel right during this class, please take a modification or take a little rest. I do offer a lot of options for this class to make it work for your body. So listen to those options, take what feels right for you, and that's how you'll get the most out of this program. So with that being said, we are going to start lying down on our backs. You have the option to lie totally flat or to have your legs extended with your knees bent. So find a comfortable setup. I'm going to join you back on the mat. Let me just tip my camera down a tiny bit. Okay. All right, so as you find your comfortable setup, again, you can have your legs totally flat, or you can have your knees bent, feet flat, whatever is comfortable for you. Just take a moment to get connected to the mat. Feel the heaviness of the backs of your shoulders, the backs of your ribs, your tailbone, your feet on the mat. Notice any spots of tension. Notice any differences from side to side. We're going to be talking today a little bit about the neutral spine position, what that means. So maybe you've heard that term before, maybe not. We'll get into those details, but just notice how your body is feeling on the mat today. Even think about the natural curve of your back. So where you have an arch in your back and maybe where your back is more flat on the mat. And as you lie here in this moment, start to tune your attention into your breath. Think about sending your breath into your rib cage and into your belly, imagining your lungs like a balloon. So you're inflating, opening up your rib cage and your lungs in all directions like a cylinder. And when you exhale, feeling the closure of your ribs together to help squeeze little bits of air lingering in your lungs. Take that inhale breath in, expand wide, and exhale breath out, feeling the rib cage glide together. Now, if this is the first movement you've done today, you might say, wow, my ribs really are not moving a lot, and that's okay. We'll recheck this again at the end of class, but see if you can start to fill up along your belly, around the backside of your ribs with air, and let that go one last time. Now, we're going to get into a little bit of pelvic tilting, but I want to show you guys a couple of landmarks to use. Take your thumbs right onto the bottom of your rib. So if you kind of feel the front bottom rib, keep your thumbs there, and then you're going to take your pinkies to the bony part of the top of your hips. So you can feel those two bones, the top of your hips and the bottom of your ribs. Those are going to be our landmarks for our neutral spine. So we're going to start with a pelvic tilt. And in a pelvic tilt, that means making that space smaller and then bigger. Smaller and then bigger. So you feel the space between your ribs and hips close and then open. Close and then open. Now see if you can do this with your breathing here. That'll be to exhale to close the space between ribs and hips. Inhale to open. Exhale, close between the ribs and hips. Inhale to open. Good. 4 more just like this. That's it. Last 3. Good. Last 2, and one more time. Now we're going to settle somewhere right in the middle. So our neutral spine position means that we leave a small curve in the very low back. So if you use your waistband as a marker, small space there, but there should be no space under your rib cage, and that follows the natural curve of our low back. So once you're in that position, try and keep your spine there and very gently rock your legs from side to side. So it's okay for your hips to lift here, but I want your rib cage to stay down on the mat. And just keep this within your spine's comfortable range of motion. So you might be able to go a little bit farther on one side than the other. Just keep this comfortable. So work within what's not painful. And hopefully as you move, you can go a little bit farther to each side. Now, as you rock, I want you to separate your feet a little bit wider and then try the same thing. So if you're using a yoga mat, your feet are about as wide as your yoga mat as you do this rocking. And that's going to change a little bit where you're feeling the stretch. This is going to bring the mobility into your hips a little bit, which is important for us when we do our lunging and squatting movements later in class today. Good. We'll try 3 more just like this. And 2 more. Good. And 1 more time here. Beautiful. Good. And then walk your feet back to about hips distance apart. And this time you want your feet to be close enough to your bottom so that you can tap your heels with your fingertips. Ground your feet down into the floor and find that neutral spine again. So there's a small space under your low back, no space underneath your rib cage. You're holding those 2 bony landmarks on the front of your body, and we're going to lift into a bridge and then lower back down. Now the trick here is when you're lifting in and out of your bridge, that the space between your ribs and hips should stay exactly the same. I find for a lot of people that when they lift up, that space gets bigger, and they lower down, it gets smaller. See if you can keep that spacing the same by softening the front of your ribs as though they are connected to your hips with a little suspender. And see if that helps to move, 1, without back pain, but 2, helps to put some more work in your glutes, your butt muscles. It may also help you to feel a little stretch across the front of your hips. And so as you lift and lower in this neutral spine, this is practicing what's called a hip hinge. A hip hinge means that you are bending and straightening from your hip. And a hip hinge is what we teach people who have back pain because it doesn't move your back. Okay, so it helps us to keep our back totally still, but still be able to bend over, squat, and move. And so in this bridging motion, we're trying that hip hinge to actually press our hips up to the ceiling and drop them back down to the floor. So I think you guys, if you're a little confused here, that's okay. You're gonna see what I mean as we get up into standing, but we'll try 3 more here. Good. Last 2. Very nice. Good. Try 1 more time here. Let's hold it at the top. Press down into your feet. We hold for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Drop your hips back down. Good. Now from here, we're going to get into a little bit of abdominal work in our neutral spine. So I think many of you have heard in the past, when you do abdominal work, you want to press your whole spine down into the mat. And that can be true sometimes, but when you have back pain, it's actually okay to leave a very small space under your low back. Now, that does not mean space under your rib cage. So you should actively think of pressing your rib cage into the mat. Okay, so you keep your hands on top of your ribs so you can feel that. And we're just going to start to lift 1 leg off the mat at a time. And this is sort of step 1. See if you can keep your ribs on the mat as you lift your legs. If this is hard, stay here. If you can keep your ribs down as you lift 1 leg at a time, lift both of your legs. If you felt your ribs pop into your hands, pull them back down, keep them on the mat. Hold this. Now the second progression is to reach 1 leg out straight and bend it back in. Then we try the opposite. Good. Now your modification is to push the legs up a little bit higher to the ceiling. Your challenge is to press the legs down lower towards the floor. And I want you to go only as far as you can without your ribs lifting. And that's because if your rib cage is lifting up, it tells me that you're losing control from the abdominals, and therefore the abdominal work is no longer as effective. So you don't always have to take the most challenging version of ab exercises to get a good abdominal workout. Good. We'll try 5 more like this. Last 4, make sure you're breathing here. I recommend exhaling as you push out, inhaling, bend in. You can do any breathing pattern as long as it's not holding your breath here. Last 3. Good. Exhale 2. And last time here, hug both knees in towards your chest. Gently rock your legs from side to side, massaging out your lower back. And then we're going to use that rock to rock ourselves right on up to a seated position. And we're going to flip on over to that all 4 setup. So you will line up. Now, if you have knee sensitivity, you can roll up your mat a couple of times to give yourself some padding. Line up with your hands underneath your shoulders, knees underneath your hips. So if you have a lot of wrist sensitivity, what I recommend trying here is just shifting your shoulders back behind your wrist just slightly. Press into the width of your palm and sink your shoulders away from your ears. Now in this position, purposely let your rib cage sag to the floor. So actually this is the same as your ribs lifting off the mat like we just practiced. Now try and draw your rib cage away from the floor. Purposely let your rib cage sag down. Now lift your ribs up away from the floor. We'll try about 5 more like that. And you may not have a lot of extension or sagging of the ribs. That's okay. Work within what's comfortable for your body, but focus on the points of the front of the ribs, dropping to the floor and then lifting away from the floor. Try 3 more. Drop, lift up and away. 2 more. We drop, lift up and away. Good. 1 more time. We drop down, lift up and away, and hold. So you should be about in your neutral spine, now in your all 4s position. So let's see if we can keep that now as we press backwards and shift forward. So imagine like I put a tray of full waters onto your low back. I want you to keep your neutral spine as you bend your hips and shift forward. This is another hip hinging exercise. So this is our ability to bend our hips without bending our back. It also doubles as a nice little hip stretch here. So keeping the ribs lifted away from the floor, can you press back and maybe challenge your motion to go back a little bit farther, but still keep that tray of waters from spilling? Good. Let's try about 3 more here. Pick your head up, drop your shoulders away from your ears. Last 2. Good. And 1 more time here. Now we're going to go ahead, walk our hands forward. If you'd like to try a little challenge, slowly lower yourself down to the floor, or you can just lie onto your stomach, whatever works for you. From this position, you can go ahead and separate your feet just slightly. Bring your hands flat underneath your shoulders, elbows in close by your side. Very gently, we're going to start to lift the back off the mat. Maybe you are lifting just your upper back. If you can, try lifting into your low back. I want this to be comfortable for your body, so work within the range of motion that works for you. See if you can keep your hips on the mat for as long as possible. So instead of letting the stretch go right to your hips, we want this one to stay in your back. This is an extension stretch. This is what keeps our back flexible, leaning backwards, which I know it feels like we don't do a lot of, but believe it or not, there are little bits of backwards leaning in our walking, in our running, and certainly carrying heavy things. We go from a position of bending forward to coming up tall. So we'll try 3 more just like this. Beautiful form here, guys. Last 2. Lowering all the way down, and 1 more time, push all the way up. Find that stretch, take a deep breath here, and melt the spine back down. Now push yourself up and back. This time, you can sit your hips back over your heels as far as you feel comfortable, maybe even letting your forehead rest down onto the mat. So just feeling that stretch across your lower back, across your mid-back, even into your shoulders, and really let your neck relax, resting your head down. We'll take a deep breath here. and then carefully come all the way on up. Good. Okay, so we're gonna do a little balance exercise. Now, let me say this first. We have one more spine movement that we haven't explored to get our spine nice and flexible, but we are going to explore that. That's side bending up and standing. So if you'd like to adjust your cameras to come up to standing position, I'm going to go ahead and adjust mine now. This is where if you feel like your balance is not great, be standing near a couch or a chair or something along those lines. So find yourself up in the standing position, separate your feet a little bit wider than hip distance. We've already done, like I said, stretching forward, stretching backwards. We're gonna do a little bit of stretching sideways now. So take your left hand, slide it down by your side, reach your right arm up and over. Now, when you reach up and over, you may feel sort of compression through the left side here. I want you to think of lifting your ribs away from your left side, pushing your left foot into the floor, reaching up with your right hand. So we do a minimal compression through the left while we still get that nice big stretch here. I'll back up a little bit so you guys can see through the right. So pushing down into the left foot, lifting that left rib away from your side, right hand up to the ceiling. Bring it down, shake it out. We're gonna try the left side now. So reach your right hand down, left arm up. We're reaching very slightly to the right, but thinking of pushing the right foot into the floor, lifting your right rib cage away, just feeling that gentle side stretch here. Imagine all your breath going into the left side of your rib cage. We'll take one more breath here, bring it back down. We'll do one more each side, left hand down, right hand up. Find that big reach up and over. Imagine creating a rainbow with your right side body. Push down into your left foot for stability. Take that deep breath into your right side body. Bring it down last time, left side, left hand up. Reach your right arm down. Draw the ribs up away from your right hip, but push your right hip into the floor. So we create space through the right side while stretching through your left. One more big breath there, and then lower back down. Okay, so we're gonna get into squatting next. Now, we use that hip hinging motion we've been practicing in a squat to protect our back. And squatting is the best way to do any kind of lifting or picking something up from the floor that's not really, really low on the floor. So I'm gonna stand sideways so you guys can see my mechanics. We're gonna take our thumbs back to the bottom of our ribs, pinkies to the top of our hips. And that's to help give us feedback, again, that we stay in the neutral spine. So when you squat, the space between your ribs and hips shouldn't change. So we start by bending our hips backwards, then our knees, then we press our hips forward and stand up tall. Hips backwards, knees, push into our feet, hips forward, stand up tall. Now notice again if that space between your ribs and hips is changing. The most common thing that I see is when you sit back and bend your knees, that the ribs drop to the floor so that space gets bigger. Keep your rib cage hugging in like it's giving your stomach a gentle hug as you squat here. I'm gonna come take a peek at the camera. I want you guys to keep practicing this because the squat is our foundation of lunging, which is what we're gonna try next. If you're feeling like, I don't know, one of my hips is sore or something feels off and unbalanced, look down at your feet. Your feet should be parallel to one another, truly parallel. Be honest with yourself. Feet should be about hip distance apart. Good, Tina, pick your head up just a little bit as you're squatting. There you go, good. Ari, same thing for you. Pick your head up just a tiny bit at the bottom, good. Okay, Dom, you can look down a little bit. So just subtly looking down towards the floor. So I'm gonna give you guys a couple cues here because I see a few, I think a lot of this comes from you guys wanting to watch the camera, but remember that your neck is an extension of the rest of your spine. So my gaze is gonna be about 2 feet in front of my toes. I don't want my head lifted here or my head hanging towards my feet. So head is just an extension of what's happening at the rest of the spine. Now, you should feel a little bit of work in your butt muscles, similar to how we felt that in our bridging motion that we did earlier in class. Excellent. Good. Christina, nice form. Laura, very nice. Joe, that looks good. Rebecca, that looks very good. Okay. Nice work there, guys. These look fabulous. So we're going to take a quick pause here and get into a balance exercise to decide how we want to do our lunging. So now find your feet truly underneath your hips. And when I say hips distance apart, our hips are not really the widest part of our legs. Our hip joint is in the middle of our thigh. Then we have bones that kind of come out to the side and in. Remember, your knees fall right underneath your hip joint. So that's right in the middle of your thigh. It's probably more narrow than you think. Once you're there, make sure your feet are parallel. You can feel your big toe, your pinky toe, and your heel on both feet. Push down into your feet and stand tall so that your shoulders are right on top of your ankles. Once you're in this position, see if you can minimize the bobbling and shifting side to side and pick your right foot up. Just balance. I just want you to notice how your body feels here. Now from the side, notice if you started to lean backwards as a way to compensate for your leg being lifted. Stack your shoulder right on top of your ankle and your hip. Push down into your left foot and notice if all your body weight is now on the outside of your foot or the inside of your foot. Balance it out. Feel weight in your heels and your toes. Grip the ground with your left foot. Stand super tall. We hold it for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Take a little rest. Okay, very good. So that was our left side. We're going to do the same thing on the right side, and I just want you guys to notice any differences. So recenter your feet underneath your hips in that narrow stance. Push down into all 5 toes and your heel. Lean your shoulders over your hips. Push down into your right foot and pick up your left. A little trick here is that you can help your balance by having, in this case, your right glute, your butt muscle, working in standing. Think of pushing your foot down like you're going to leave a footprint while at the same time picking your rib cage up off your hips. Once again, notice if your body is kind of leaning or compensating in one direction. Really work to get up tall as though you have a wall back behind you and you are leaning very gently against that wall. Think about your right foot. See if you can center your body weight between your big toe, your pinky toe, and your heel. Notice any asymmetries of where your weight is on this side. We hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Come all the way down. Now we check that in our back pain class because subtle asymmetries from side to side between our legs can make a little impact in how our back responds to walking and to lifting and all those things. So I just want you to notice them. Probably you could feel one side was a little bit harder than the other, and it may be worth practicing. It might be worth strengthening a little bit more on that side or practicing your balance. But the main reason I had us try that today is because we are going to use your stronger leg to help with lunging. So we practice our squat, right? And we can get down fairly low with our squat. But if something's really all the way on the floor, let's say we want to do some gardening or we want to clean the floors, you need to get down a little bit lower than a squat. And that's where we use our lunge. So I want you to take your stronger leg. Mine is my left leg, but whatever your stronger leg is, and you're going to place it down onto the floor. You're leaving it as your front leg. So your stronger leg is your front leg. You're going to step your weaker leg behind you about a pretty big step, you know, let's say about 2 feet or so. I'm going to take both of my hands onto my stronger knee and then bend down. Okay, so now I'm kneeling on my back leg. Now I can get down to the floor. I can, you know, do my laundry, my weeding. I can pick something up. To come back up, I'm going to put both hands on my strong knee again, push down into the floor, and stand up tall. Let's try that once again, and we'll talk about a couple other cues here. So reach your weaker leg back behind you. Hands come onto the thighs. You're going to lower yourself down. Now, if you had trouble coming up, think about getting your nose over your toes. That's going to help your body weight shift. So nose over the toes, push into that front leg and stand up tall. Now, if you notice, it looks like a squat in your standing leg. So I want you to focus now on keeping the neutral spine. So keeping the space between your ribs and hips the same. Reach back with your weaker leg, tip your nose forward over your toes and bend down. Keeping the nose over your toes, push into your standing front leg and stand up tall. So at this point, you may still need to keep your hands on your knees for a little bit of balance. If you feel pretty strong and pretty balanced here, try doing that same step back and lunging down and standing up tall without your hands. And that takes a little bit of balance. It takes a little bit of strength from the side hips. I'm going to come take a look at everybody's form for this one. Good. Alan, that was excellent. Very nice form. Good strength there. Now, if you're someone who did both sides and you said, you know, I really don't have a lot of differences from side to side, try both here. You may find that in this bigger lunging movement, one is much easier than the other. Maybe you're nice and symmetrical, and that's awesome. It's worth practicing both sides. Good, Petra, that looked nice. When you are standing up, I see a lot of you rolling your foot to the outside of your feet, so more weight on the pinky toes. Focus on your big toe. Imagine a very important document underneath your big toe, especially when you stand up. If you're wobbling a lot side to side, that should help you find that center of balance. Good, guys. Beautiful. I'm going to take a look at a couple more here. Miria, good job. That was excellent. Nice job centering your feet. Mir, that looks really good with the neutral spine. Nice form. Good. Paul, pick your chest up just a little bit. Nice control through your hips. Excellent. Good. Okay, so that concludes our movement-based part of the class. You guys did a wonderful job today. I know that was a lot of big movements. And I teach you those lunging and those squats, one, because they are things that happen in our regular day-to-day life. So that's a technique that you can use to keep your back safe with any kind of bending, lifting, kneeling tasks. But two, you can probably see how those are good exercises to practice to help build up your strength and stamina in your legs to protect your back. If you've taken any other exercise classes virtually, you've probably done squatting, you've probably done lunging before. That's a good way to help kind of focus in on what your form should look like when you do those exercises to protect your back. So I want to use our last minute of class here to answer any additional questions that you have. So go ahead, since we have a larger group here, you guys can write them to me in the chat. We'll also spend a moment after class going over that feedback app. I would love to hear any feedback that you guys have about this program, and so we can continue to make it better and better each week for you. So thank you all so much for joining in today. I know some of you probably have to go, but I'm happy to answer any questions that come up. No questions. Okay. Oh, here's a good one. Is it possible to record this? Yes. Kathy, all the sessions are recorded. And so they are posted on our video hub. When you go on the Parks at Work website, you will see the video hub. All the videos from all the Community Online Academy are there. Sean just posted that. So this class will be available tomorrow if you want to go back and rewatch that. Okay. All right. One quick question here before we get into the feedback app. Someone asked about pain with sleeping on their stomach. They have pain in the lower back. So if you're not able to change your sleep position maybe to being on your back, I would recommend putting a pillow underneath your hips Likely being on your back is just a prolonged period of extension. You can put a pillow underneath your hips, and that will flex you just a little bit to take some of the pressure off of your back. Oh, let me answer one more here because this is a good one about today's class. So someone asked if when you do the standing hip hinge, you feel a burn across the low back. Is that due to weakness? It's hard to say what might be causing that, but likely it has to do with your core strength in that bending forward position. So like I said, sometimes the ribs are dropping towards the floor. If you can practice pulling your ribs up and in, that helps to engage your core. It should protect your back a little bit as you go into that tipped position. So very nice work with that. Good question. I'm going to read through the